Hello, this is my reaction video to this week's readings on environment and culture and how they help us understand aggressive behavior in humans and this week in non-human animals. And so one thing that I really enjoyed about this week's readings was really talking about some universals that can help us understand aggression. When we read the paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences by Ken Dodge and his group, we see that there are a lot of similarities around the world in terms of what can predispose someone to behave aggressively. So hostile attribution bias was a very reliable predictor of aggressive behavior among 12 different regions of the world. But another thing that really popped out to me that was interesting was also how there were differences around the world. So you find just this main effect of hostile attribution bias. People who have this just tend to be more aggressive, but also how it really did depend on what was important in a group, different countries and things like that. And so so I thought that was a really important component, and what it helped me better understand and really appreciate was the importance of learning and not simply the fact that there are universals or that we're born with certain tendencies, but it's a combination of both nature and nurture. So I think Ken Dodge's paper really did a great job looking at that. The other two papers that I liked, I liked all of them, but the Bushman JPSB paper on temperature and aggression I thought was needed, and it was interesting because it's a kind of a rebuttal to some other work that has suggested a curvilinear relationship between temperature and aggressive behavior, arguing that instead of a linear relationship, it's curvilinear. So the most aggressive temperature, or the strongest link between temperature and aggression is actually around 70 degrees, which is kind of ridiculous. I mean, at least the Bushman paper suggests that that's the case. And then we found very similar evidence, or we saw some very similar evidence in the paper with convict cichlids, which I thought was really fascinating. And it was actually the first paper that I've read looking at aggression in fish. One question that I had related to the cichlid paper, and that they also mention a little bit, is how much of these effects, both with humans and with non-humans, with temperature and aggression, are due to an increased level of aggressiveness, or is it what comes between the temperature and aggression? Is it just higher levels of arousal, or is it just general approach motivation? So so the authors in the cichlid paper note that cichlids they want to spawn at about 30 degrees Celsius, which is also when they become the most aggressive. And so is it simply that when it gets really hot outside, or if I'm a cichlid, if the water becomes hot where I'm swimming around in it, the ambient temperature increases, that I am just predisposed toward action, and action specifically that is approach oriented. And so we know that aggression is an approach-related action. People oftentimes, they don't withdraw from others in order to attack other people. It's very much an approach-related motivation. And so that was one thing that I was wondering about, is whether or not, in some of these papers, if they could, we don't often see people test that alternative explanation of something that predisposes a person toward behaving aggressively, like a hostile attribution bias, if that hostile attribution bias not only predisposes them toward aggressive behavior, but also just toward non-aggressive approach-related behaviors as well. And what does that say just about the broader sort of motivational system of which aggression is a part? So those are just some of my thoughts for this week's readings, and I'll see you tomorrow.